We are really excited to bring the Hub to life and that we can finally share all of the tools and resources that we've been developing over the last several months. So today I will run you through a little bit about who we are, but mostly focus on what it is that we've put together and that will hopefully make your lives easier. So next slide, please. So my name is Lindsay Falaska. I'm the director of the Building Innovation Hub. We are being run as a program of the Institute for Market Transformation, a nationally recognized nonprofit that specializes in driving demand for high-performing buildings. So the Hub is here to support local building industry and make it easier for everyone to own and operate, design, and build basically better performing buildings. So we're here to help meet current needs that you have around the regulatory changes, like breaking down the implications of a lot of what Jamie was mentioning, the building energy performance standards and outlining code changes and providing resources about the issues that the market is currently focused on, like very specifically health and wellness right now. So our goal is to not just provide information about these topics, but outline how and where they all connect and explain what options are available to you in order to be able to address them all. So if you go to the next slide. To break down the existing ecosystem of everything that's available to you right now and where we fit in, I want to explain our role in this space. So right now you have the DCSEU, DC Sustainable Energy Utility, who you can call for technical one-on-one assistance with projects, and they can also help identify available incentives and rebates. The DC Green Bank just launched their inaugural programs and can help building owners identify project financing strategies. You, of course, have DCRA and DOEE, who can both help with like nuanced specifics about how the regulations apply to your specific properties or projects. And then you have the Hub. So we are here to help tie all of these pieces together. If you don't know who to call or where to turn for help, you are more than welcome to reach out to us, call or email. We will happily get you connected to the right people. So we are here to specifically address market barriers and provide tools as requested by you all. So our job is to be responsive to what you need to not just help achieve compliance with the regulations that Jamie was referencing, but also to generally help push the industry forward. So next slide. So in order to do that, we are providing resources and tools and eventually services to help make building improvements. And we are certainly here to help you overcome today's hurdles, but our main job is to also help everyone look at the long-term implications of decisions. Next slide. So what is it that we've actually assembled to do all of this? Next slide. So to understand the big picture, again, a lot of what Jamie was referencing, we've developed resources that show how various regulations tie to the district's larger goals. So we explain how the district's goals around greenhouse gas emissions relates to energy reductions, specifically in the building energy performance standards. We have resources that talk about electrification options that are available and how and when you should consider making a switch to help the district meet its carbon neutrality goals. And we also outline how energy service procurement, as a result of needing to make building improvements, can advance not just the district's, but everyone's goals around equity and inclusion. So next slide. We want to ensure that we're not just addressing the district's goals, but that we are also developing tools that address barriers in the market. So many of these resources that I'm going to list actually came about because of the stakeholder engagement that we did and the feedback we received during our development process. So next slide. A big part of what we've done and will continue to do as things move forward is outline how all of the various regulations connect so that when you're making decisions around a building or a project, you're doing it as comprehensively as possible. So to prepare you for the building energy performance standards, we have resources that address BEPS and not just the rules, but implications for you and your projects. We've broken down the BEPS compliance cycles based on what you will need to do and by when to ensure compliance. We have another resource that talks about how architects and engineers can actually design with Energy Star score in mind, which is not a metric that is typically reviewed during the design process. In regards to benchmarking, we have specific resources geared towards that. And although many building owners in the district have been benchmarking properties for many years, the quality of that data matters now more than ever since it has implications for compliance with BEPS. And so we actually look at typical errors we see in benchmarking data, some of which actually have huge implications on reported Energy Star score or EUI. And we also outline how building owners and operators should use benchmarking data to understand what actions to take to make performance improvements. And then in terms of codes, we break down the recent code changes and the impacts those changes have on building energy use. We also have a resource that outlines specific requirements associated with building envelope commissioning, a new requirement. And then one of my favorite resources actually looks at the intersection of BEPS and codes, and it answers the question, will I be compliant with BEPS if I design to the new code? And so we break down this for both commercial office and multifamily residential buildings. So next slide. This one. So this was the number one cited barrier was cost. So what we've done to address this and to make it easier for you to understand the full landscape of what's available is put together a funding and financing map, which includes all available programs and options for the district's commercial real estate industry. So you can filter or sort by your building type or the type of improvement you're looking to make or the type of incentive that's available, whether it's a rebate, incentive, a loan, or if it's tied to a mortgage. So next slide. We are here to spread the word about best practices that we need to expect from every single discipline in the building industry. So we have put together a building industry playbook, which outlines specific actions that each discipline in the industry needs to take in order to prioritize building performance. I mean, we know that the industry is incredibly segmented by discipline, and it's really easy for everyone to be like, oh, that's the other guy's issue. So this resource outlines responsibilities that everyone has related to this topic and the actions that frankly need to happen as a result. So we look at the role of the building owner, operator, architect, engineer, let's see if I can do this, general contractor, broker, and commercial tenant, and sort of what everyone's role is in that space. We also have an O&M best practices guide for energy management, which was graciously put together by the AOVA Educational Foundation. We've also developed a guide about green leasing and BEPS and what each stakeholder needs to do as part of the process, part of the leasing process. We also break down what commercial tenants need to know about BEPS and how the rules apply to them and what their role is in whole building performance. Next slide. So workforce development was another market barrier that we heard repeatedly, and the need for a qualified vendor list. So to be perfectly honest, we did not create that list, just being honest here. I felt that creating a running list of all vendors deemed qualified wouldn't actually be a useful tool because what qualified means to me or to one person is always different for another. And it's frankly different between projects and scopes. So instead, what we've done to address this is developed a service procurement guide, which can help owners and operators identify the qualifications that matter to them for their project and help expand the potential reach for finding vendors who actually meet those qualifications. It also outlines how social equity can be considered throughout this process as well. So related to that, another program we're looking forward to launching to build on it is a building to vendor matchmaking program, which will help connect building owners and their projects to a larger pool of available contractors. So if anyone on this chat or on this presentation is a vendor who wants to join our distribution list, or if you're a building owner who would like to be notified when the service launches, you can sign up on our website, and we will share project opportunities as we receive them. Next slide. The building industry is incredibly averse to change. So our job to reduce that market barrier is to highlight all of the innovative or forward-leaning things that market leaders in and around DC are already doing. So we've developed a few case studies. We'll continue to develop more. And we've also put together market leaderboards, which highlight which owners and operators are already running the highest performing buildings in the city. So there is a lot of great work that is already happening in and around DC, and we want to showcase that. We want to showcase that for others to emulate. So if you have one of these stories or you want to share a case study that we should put together, please also reach out and let us know about it. So next slide. That is a debrief on some of the things we've developed for our launch and that are currently available to you right now. But we have a number of things that we are looking forward to in the coming months and years as well. So next slide. We have a few educational programs that we are co-hosting and a few more in the works. So next week on November 18th, we are co-hosting a free webinar with AOBA and AOBA Educational Foundation called Building Operations and Maintenance Best Practices for COVID-19 and Beyond. And then in early December, December 3rd, we're co-hosting a webinar with USGBC National Capital Region called Health Meets Energy Performance, Designing a Resilient and Strong DC. And so you can find links to both of those events on our website as well. We are also going to be developing BEPS-specific education, especially as the standards are released and the rules are finalized. While we don't currently offer specific one-on-one services, that is something we are looking to build out as we build capacity. And then we are also setting up an advisory board to help guide the future of the hub. So we are also asking the industry to nominate people to sit on our board. Lastly, we are hiring. So we have a position open for an associate director of outreach and engagement. So next slide. So we need your participation to make the hub a success, since our mission is to be responsive to what the industry needs. Next slide. So please check out our website. You can find all of the resources and tools I mentioned, along with information about how to join the advisory board or applying to the job position or signing up to be part of the matchmaking program. You can sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date on what we're offering. And frankly, we are always interested in hearing what you think or what you need. So please reach out and let us know how we can help support. So last slide. I think that's the last slide. Yeah. Okay. So thank you for having me today. Please check out the website. Feel free to reach out. I'm happy to talk anytime about questions or thoughts that you all have.
Thank you, Lindsay. That was a great presentation. I wish a few years ago when I was in building operations, I had these resources available to me, because I know I spent many hours, probably days, looking online, trying to find friends, putting together O&M guides. And so it's great to have it in one place. So does anyone have any questions they have for Lindsay before we kick it over? And you can type them or you can unmute yourself and ask them.
Thank you for typing that.
I have one question, Lindsay, and it's, I know you have the tool where you can find financial resources that list the different incentives and financing options. So is that tool just for building owners, or is it for anyone in the industry?
Anyone can use it. I say it's for building owners because typically they're the ones who have to apply to receive the financing, but anyone can use it to find out what's available. So it's open, it's on our website. People can sort through it to help figure out on behalf of their building owners or their clients what's available. So by all means, check it out. And if you find, or if you think that we're missing a program that should be included, please let us know, because we are also in the process of making sure that we are a true hub and collecting all of the information that's out there.
Got you. Thank you. Well, with that, I'm sensing there's no more questions in this round. And so we'll kick it over to Tim. And Tim, if you can, have about 15 minutes for the presentation, and then we'll open it up for discussion.
Okay. Can you hear me, Jamie?
I can hear you well.
Okay. All right. Tim Blanche, I'm pleased to be able to talk to everybody today. I'm going to try to share some technical information, a fair amount of philosophical, how do you approach things, and then a decent amount of what do we do? You know, so this is trying to hit a lot of things at different levels from different angles. And in 15 minutes, you know, I can't do too much of any of it, but we do have some time for follow-up questions. So I think that's probably a better way to do it, is I'll lay out what I see are some of the bigger items, and then you guys can interact. I'm looking at the chat, so if you have questions that you're thinking of, go ahead and let the chat questions rip, and I'll try to watch them while I'm talking. All right, 1441 L Street is a new building. We kept the concrete structure. It was 10 stories, had one blind wall. We added 2 floors in a rentable penthouse. Then it was all new in every way, a little over 200,000 square feet, 12 stories, completed in June of 2019. So by the end of May, we had our first 12 months of utilities, which resulted in a 17.4 EUI. Pretty astounding. The part that makes it really astounding is that we did it using 100% outdoor air, which means no recirculated air. Basically, the building is always in a state of purge. So we kind of were, well, we were pretty surprised to see how well it turned out, to be honest. Next. But how did we end up with that kind of results? It starts philosophically that buildings are for people. You know, I think we've kind of been in sort of the trend of the environment and energy, and I think over the last few years we've been realizing that the buildings really need to perform well for the occupants, and there are a lot of categories that we can consider that weren't necessarily considered in some of the other metrics. So this building was designed really with that philosophy in mind. And what particular concerns did we have? Well, if you are a developer, if you are a property manager, landlord, you own the building, you operate it, you lease it, you fix it, you clean it, you do the tenant build outs, and you take out the trash. And you know, if you do all the services of running a building, you figure out a lot of things about what really matters to tenants and the real challenges in day-to-day operations and even long-term that buildings have, particularly with systems and HVAC and plumbing. But HVAC is the big one. When you're running a building, that occupies most of your time. So we said, well, what's comfortable for tenants? What makes them healthy? And we really cared about their happiness. So I'll mention the stock high performance building report. You guys should read that. Everybody on this chat should read stock, STOK. It's online. A bunch of smart people put a lovely report together. It says that healthy, comfortable buildings, high performance buildings make for happier employees that produce more, have higher retainage, and they pay back in spades. But this was the philosophy going in. Next. So we said, well, what should we pick if we really care about our occupants' comfort? We picked chill beams, 4-pipe active chill beams, so we could heat, cool with them. And that's a little diagram I stole off the internet, and you can see parts of it are missing. But if you don't know what a chill beam is, it's a very simple device. It has a coil that the room air goes gets induced up through the coil, gets cooled or heated. In this case, this is in cooling mode. So you're running medium chilled water through it, which means 57 degrees, which means it doesn't condensate. The biggest problem you can have with chilled beams is raining. You didn't control your dew point. You introduced too cold of chilled water, and it's sweated, and your beams are raining. We've never had that happen. But the thing about an active chilled beam is that it needs primary cold air. In this case, you see that on the side, primary cold air, and you sort of prime the pump. It goes through the nozzles up top, and at high velocity, low pressure helps induce room air across the coil, mixes with the primary air, and you get about a 3-to-1 induction ratio and increases the heating and cooling performance of the beam. There are no moving parts, no fans, no motors, no dampers, no actuators, no temperature sensors, no nothing. It's a coil and some sheet metal. They're very simple. They probably will last for at least 50 years with no maintenance. And they're not even that expensive, about $400 for a 2x4 chilled beam with a nice, beautiful linear bar grill instead of the perfs. So we really looked at this, and generally, I think the industry agrees chilled beams are the most energy efficient devices, but that isn't really why we picked them. We picked them more for comfort. Next slide. Next. All right. So the active chilled beams require what? A lot of primary air, PA, primary air. This was the first thing that we really had to wrestle with in design. And what it caused us to realize is that if we were going to use, outdoor air, we would need about 2.65 times the minimum ventilation requirement for outdoor air if we were to make all the primary air outdoor air. Fresh outdoor air, not a mixture of that with some recirculated air. And so we wrestled with this, and we decided, well, it sure would be a lot simpler if our building had one type of air in it. But if you're going to bring a lot of outdoor air in, you're going to have to exhaust a lot of air. So what we did is we design and operate the bathrooms, the restrooms at 3 times code. So instead of 75 CFM per fixture, a toilet, it's 225. So if you have 4 toilets in a typical restroom in this building, men's and ladies, that would be set 300 CFM. We operate at 900, which is pretty wonderful. And then, so what did this lead to? What I call super DOAS. So a lot of people do DOAS, dedicated outdoor air system, and that's what we have here. But nobody does a super DOAS where all of the air to the terminal devices, whether they're VAVs or chilled beams, is outdoor air. So that was a big difference here. So we have very large DOAS units for this building. But that's basically the process. Active chilled beams require a lot of primary air. Why not simplify the systems and take a lot of exhaust and take advantage of that extra exhaust and make your bathrooms wonderful? All you're doing is making bigger DOAS. Go ahead. That's fine. Go ahead. Next, yeah. So the super DOAS was made possible by 76.9% energy recovery, enthalpy wheels. Also, EC fans. We had some of the first ones high static in the industry, which really do save a lot of energy. This is an advantage of air over hydronics these days. We have hydronic, no advances in hydronic efficiency on pumping. Essentially, the motors are the same. AC motors with drives are the same efficiency they've been for many decades. So the drives have helped us save energy, but not the motors and not the pumps. But electronically commutated motors, introduced mainly now for fans, are a large advance in energy efficiency, making air movement much more competitive versus hydronic energy transfer that we have largely relied on in the past. So And then the third little arrow there is that we found out with the DOAS, the super DOAS, we created a massive airside economizer, and that is significant in the energy efficiency of the building. Allowed us to turn off the chiller plant 7 months out of the first year that we operated it. We did not expect that great of a benefit, but when you can bring in an almost unlimited amount of outdoor air, you can operate with your plant off many, many, many hours because it doesn't really matter what your cooling load is. You can bring enough air in to handle it. So that was kind of a surprise at the amount of benefit we got from that airside economizer. I would say from an efficiency design point of view, we were very careful with measurement. We put all of the temperature sensors are either 2 or 3 function with relative humidity in all of them, so that we control dew point. And a number of them have CO2 sensors built in, and the tenants can read it and see it. You can walk in and see your parts per million of CO2 in a lot of places in the building. That was something we hadn't done before. We put magnetic flow meters in, not turbine style, which get gummed up under record waste energy. AFMS, airflow measuring stations. That is a damper combined with a flow meter so that you can measure how many CFMs going in through the device and then modulate it. So and then we have a lot of electric meters. And finally, on the control level, we put, I didn't describe that correctly. The airflow measuring damper is in the control level. We have airflow measuring stations, which are just measurement probes in the central plant. The DOAS units, but we have the damper devices throughout the building, about 20 per floor, all of the primary air and 4 exhaust AMDs per floor. So we are, if you think of a riser diagram, we're putting all the primary air out through the zones in these AMDs per floor, and then we're doing the same thing with the restrooms and the return from the tenant spaces on every floor. So you essentially are balancing your building constantly. It's like you have 10 balancers on board. All right, so that is something very critical that I won't spend any more time talking about it, but it's absolutely critical to the efficiency and how well the building works. We have over 300 Belimo energy valves, which is a BTU meter and a control valve combined. We have a number of VFDs. We use BACnet IP. But maybe most important of all is we have a web page dashboard, whatever you want to call it, which shows you the instantaneous demand in kW and therms, and then also EUI and cost per hour, both in a trailing average on your EUI. So we have converted all of this information into the metrics that we use that we get billed for, that we track our Energy Star ratings for in our EUI, and that has been absolutely necessary for the kind of performance we've gotten here. Next. All right, so that's kind of the technical, and you know, you guys that are engineers know that there's a lot I didn't talk about. I didn't talk about maglev chillers and some other stuff, but this slide here is we're getting into the philosophy of all of us and trying to involve all the different parties that might be, whatever your role is in buildings in the city. You can see all the different people there. I probably left some folks out, but I had, you know, that one circle's got four categories in it. You know, if I left you out, you know, go imagine you're in one of those 5 circles. You're there somewhere. So let's, the circle of life or death. I know that's a little strong, but this is a tough business market. The buildings are operating at most are around 3 to 5% occupancy. That's not so good. And we are, you know, landlords are struggling, tenants are struggling. It's a bad time for buildings. So, you know, no, that's not even mentioning the health issues. Okay. So I really think this is kind of a very, I think we're at a crisis. So I thought that that's actually a fair way to describe the situation we're in. Next. Yeah, and somebody put up the stock report link. So thank you, Financial Case for High Performance Buildings. That's excellent. Look, it's 40 some pages. If you read the first 7 or 8 pages, you get the gist of it. So You don't need to read the whole thing. All right, so let's start with me. I'm going to poke at myself first. Are we, as developers, going to think short-term or long-term? The definition of the word sustainable is a long-term approach. All right, that's what sustainable means. I have been and continue to be very upset by developers who do not, they don't care, okay? Most developers do not care about sustainability. They care about making a profit in the shortest term and selling the building and moving on. They don't give a shit about the turd they leave behind for everybody else. And I think that is wrong. And I think every developer who has a role, who's going to develop a building or redevelop it or reprogram it or whatever, I think they've got to stop with the short-term profits. If we continue to do that, we're just never going to get where we need to be. So that it really upsets me, because you don't have to do it that way. You can have sustainability, you can have quality, you can have efficiency without, breaking the bank. But you got to think differently, okay? And a lot of it is intellectual laziness. We don't want to get out of our comfort zone. We did it this way in this last building, and I made money doing it that way, and I don't care if there's something better. I don't care, because that's got risk, and I don't understand it, and it might not turn out, and I'm not going to do it. So that's a horrible way to do buildings, and it makes me sick. It really makes me sick. I think that sometimes we shouldn't do projects. If the financing is so bad that you can't afford to do it right, maybe you shouldn't do the project. If you're a school system, I can't afford to do the building the way I want to. Well, don't do 4 buildings a year. Do 3 buildings a year. Do 2 buildings a year. Do 1 a year, but do it right. We don't have to have a million of these things and hurry up and let's slow down. Let's think. Let's do them correctly. All right. Vertical integration. Are we going to chop it up? This, I think, is one of the key factors that made 1441 successful, is we had that vertical integration. We understood from the beginning to the end, top to bottom, exactly what we were doing. So many times it's passed from this guy to that guy to this guy to that guy to this guy. And it's like a long chain. And all it takes is for one person not to understand what the reason why it was designed this way for that chain to break. We did not allow that to happen. We watched it from the beginning to the end. So that's why the building performs so well. And that's a chore. I'm going to tell you, I maybe never worked harder in my life than putting that building together. Are we going to follow? Or we're going to lead? Developers generally are not innovative. They look around and see what the other guys are doing, and they say, "Oh, we're going to do that." I found this on the Specialized bike site yesterday, electric bikes, because I love electric. And they said, "Are we going to innovate or are we going to die?" I stole that from Specialized. Okay, so I guess it's not that, but I think that is true. Innovate or die. We really need to think different. So I think developers really need to be challenged about why they do what they do. And I really don't have a lot of good things to say about them. But, they try, they think they're doing the right thing, and some of them actually do. But yeah, moving on. All right, design folks, you've got to learn what we're talking about here. You got to read the BEPS, the clean energy legislation. I believe that's about 40 pages. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you got to read it and understand what's in it. Get a highlighter out, or however you read, and go through it and learn it. You're designing these buildings for net zero. Understand the terms. Make sure you can do it for your house. Yes, somebody is saying, why does developers don't understand the simple fact that lowering your operating costs by $1 increases your asset value X cap rate multiples. Yeah. By the way, 1441, we were at 77 cents a square foot for the first 12 months. That's before we put the solar system on. That's before we put the, which had a 26-month payback. So, you know, what developer in his right mind wouldn't put a solar system on their roof right now? You'd see. But some of them don't. I've worked my butt off to get 2 of them approved for the company I work for. You know, why didn't we have them on all our buildings? But anyway, at least I got 2 of them in. But yeah, we were at 77 cents a foot a year. You know, if you compare that to $3 a foot, that's $500,000 a year in utility costs that the building saved. $500,000 a year for 1441L. Water, sewer, electric, and gas. That's astounding, right? You know, and the boss loved it when I told him that. Later, he got rid of me. But anyway, advise clients, okay, architects, engineers, commissioning agents, manufacturers, you know, you're going to have knowledge that you advise by, or you're just going to go along with what the guy signing your paycheck says. You're going to be a yes man, a yes woman, or you're going to stand up and say, you know, I just don't think this is the right way to go. I'm not going to take the easy way out and say, the client said this, that's what his decision, we'll go along with it. No, you challenge your clients. You say, here's why I don't think that's wise. Maybe ultimately they don't listen to you, but you don't just take the easy way out and say, I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to be uncomfortable because it's their decision. Don't do that. You know, I just don't think that's a good way to live your life. You need to follow up on your buildings. How did they do? Learn from them. Are you going to be a slave to energy models, or are you going to challenge them? 1441 energy model was 40.3. All right, well, you want to know what I think about energy models? Don't trust them one bit, all right? And then I think that we need, as designers, we need to stay on top of the latest products and try to use them and implement them. I think that we live in a time of immense technical, it's like a feast. There's so much great stuff going on. We have magnetic bearing chillers. We have EC motors, solar, lithium-ion batteries. We have energy valves. We have so many things that we can select to make our buildings better. You know, I think of Tesla, electric cars. They're real, you know. It's a different thing that we didn't see 10 or 15 years ago, but it's here. All right, tenants. You guys all put up these lovely mission statements about sustainability, and then when you go to lease a building, you don't care. It doesn't come up. You drive down the lease price. You want the most incentives, free rent, the best tenant improvement allowance. That's fair. You can ask for all. It's a negotiating. That's fine. But in the process, you don't care about sustainable features in buildings, and you don't reward them with. You don't reward building developers who are really trying to do energy efficient and healthy buildings. You really don't. You don't do it in practice when you're leasing. That's shameful, especially when you all say our business practice is sustainable. That is just wrong. But why does that happen? Because you don't know better. You don't understand what these metrics are. You don't really put the time into it. You have somebody else that handles it, your broker, and you really don't manage it and put the effort in. So I think it's time for tenants to start putting the effort in, taking a little more control over this, and you'll be the one that benefits from it. All right, next slide. Yeah, there we go. Okay, tenants. Who was it? Oh, did we skip the broker slide? I think we did. Well, I almost don't want to even say this one, but brokers. I don't have a lot good to say about brokers, so I think they need to change the way they're operating. But you know, the transactions have dried up, so the brokers are starving right now. You know, you can read that real quick. I really don't want to add to that. But we need brokers to do better. leave it at that. All right, I think I'm just about done here.
Okay.
Can you? Oh, the city. I got to go talk about the city. And then we're done. Next. There we go. Okay.
I wasn't trying to cut you off before you got to that.
No, you're doing great. So the city, we have outdated zoning requirements, like green roofs are fighting with solar PV. And there's a lovely detail that shows how we can put both on roofs, but it greatly limits the amount of PV. So what's more important? And I think from a fossil fuel point of view, renewable energy, the solar is worth so much more. And it's not that we can't do some green. I mean, it makes sense in some spots, but we've got to eliminate that conflict. Okay, that's really crushing the ability to get away from fossil fuels. So that's just an outdated relic that needs to be fixed by the city. AGU was allowed to put a solar hat on the building, which probably gave them 10 times the amount of solar panels than they would have been otherwise. That's how they've been able to get to net zero, at least on paper. And by the way, and I love those guys, they're my blind wall neighbors, my 2001 S building. But I don't think they're quite on track to get to that. I mean, we'll let them tell the story, but even if they could get to it, the reason they could get there was because of about a 10 times increase in solar panels versus any other building because of all the zoning requirements. So, and that was at a 13 EUI, which they're not getting, okay? So that's something the city's got to take a hard look at. That's the only way the city really can get to all renewable, okay, is solar hats on buildings. Let's get into batteries instead of, gas or diesel generators. Those things are horrible. You know, they cost a fortune to put in a building. They're one of the biggest maintenance nightmares, and they never do anything for you. You know, most buildings don't use them even for one real fire event in their whole life. So why are we putting all this money into these large, noisy, nasty, wasteful things? And we could be putting batteries in that we can use to manage our demand and take care of the duck curve in the afternoons when the clouds hit. You know, they'd be multifunction batteries. I mean, we're putting them on the grid. Why not put them in the buildings? For the same money or less, you can put batteries right now versus generators. Let's get that fixed in code. We've got utilities kind of slapping us around a little on our solar PV, which I won't even get into the details of that, but there's a little nasty thing they're doing with this as we try to put this in. And then, permit stuff, we got to work together. And I think that when designers come and say, my new design, yeah, they're here, and here, it doesn't meet code. But there's reasons why. We have new products, we have technologies, we have goals of the clean energy. We're all trying to do all these things. So we have relics in the code that make sense for the time they were written, but they don't make sense now. And we need to be careful that we're trying to hold on to things that really should be updated. And then DCSEU, lovely people, love those people, some of the nicest people you ever want to work with, but they never give me any money. And I think I deserve more money more than just about anybody in the city, and I can't get in it. 1441 was not eligible for any money. Something's wrong there. So anyway, next slide.
That might be the last slide, Tim, but I think either way, maybe we'll transition now to a Q&A session. I know we've had some comments in the chat box, but let me open it up to questions. If anyone has questions for either one of our presenters, feel free to type it in or just unmute yourself and share your thoughts.
I'll respond to one thing while people just type in. So Tim, to your point about AGU. So in my past life, I was the project architect for the American Geophysical Union. So the reason that they were able to do that solar hat, if you will, is because the actual building was below the height limit. So there was no qualms about actually going above the height of the penthouse to get that solar array up. And what that also allowed was that it meant that the green roof was 12 feet below the solar panel. So it was a different sort of configuration than what you see most buildings doing in terms of green roof versus solar panel, because there was a lot of delta between those panels and that green roof.
Okay, that's great. But I just think that the lessons learned from AGU should be applied to the zoning rules. That's
absolutely. No, absolutely. And so in all fairness, AGU was the first building to do that, and how we actually went about getting it through zoning and permitted were questions that we actually did work with DCRA on and figuring out, and the zoning off or BZA on, about how we were going to actually permit it, what we were classifying it as. The fact that we had to classify it as a, I believe it was like a non-compliant penthouse because we were extending over the property line. And so those are things that we actually worked with the city on to say, you want to achieve these goals, we're all here for it. How do we actually get this through? And so there were a lot of lessons learned that come when you do something like that for the first time. So I don't know, what will happen, because the zoning rules were basically changed right before that project happened. But it was lessons learned for all parties, what it means to actually do that type of work.
Right. And I mean, I think it's just a fantastic effort and project, and I love what they did, but we've got to learn from it. And if we don't learn from it and then update the zoning to take advantage of it, then, it just isn't doing what it should do for us. So anyway, there must be some other questions. The outdoor air, guys, 100% outdoor air. Nobody does this. I think it's the perfect solution for anti-COVID. You're not mixing air across the room from somebody else that might be sick. It goes up in the plenum, and then it gets exhausted out of the building. I will say that chilled beams are expensive, and we found that out in our build-outs. All that small bore copper piping was expensive to put in. So I did come up with a different way to do 100% outdoor air that doesn't require hydronics, which means no chilled beams. It's more of an EAV type system. So I think that's great news. We've got a way to do 100% outdoor air that I think is very affordable. And you still get a lot of the benefits that we did at 1441. Yes, we have had an uptick in some interest in some tenants who are very concerned about COVID. Yeah, they are, I think the challenge is that the market's kind of dead right now. They're interested, they're looking at it. I think we got one tenant because of it, but nobody's really eager to move in and take space at the moment when so many people have been working from home. So it has helped us. It has, but it's a terrible market. I was laid off a month ago, so I don't work for SC Herman anymore. That tells you how bad things are for some of the developers. I think that I'm going to mention that solar panels have recently increased in power. I put 385 watt panels, commercial size, on at 1441. And they're now at 440 watts. So that is really great news, and helps anybody that's interested in doing a solar project, whether it's a retrofit or part of a new design. But 440 is a big improvement over 385. So I think everybody ought to know about that. I think, okay. Vertically integrated design can save money. Fire booster pump and backup generator. Well, when I say vertically integrated design, yes. I'll give you a specific example. We select mechanical and electrical early in design, and then we design around it. We bid it out and buy it, and sort of do a form of design build. And when you select the equipment early and you then can select the controls early, and all of that can be put into your drawings. Okay, you're designing around actual equipment it makes it a much cleaner design process, which translates into very clean construction, because I was buying a lot of this stuff myself, early. So I wasn't in a hurry to get an electrical contractor or mechanical contractor under contract so they could get submittals for long lead items. I just took that out of the equation, and the stuff showed up before they even needed it. So that was one example of how that helps a lot. What are some of the smartest, cost-effective measures a building can undertake? The first thing you have to do is know your energy efficiency, which means you've got to know, what's your KW, what's your plant using, what's its load, and then, sort of KW per tons in your chiller plant. So you have to have BTU meters in your chiller plant. If you don't have that, what is my cooling and heating load? You really got to start with that, and then blend in your metering. So that's the first thing you have to do. You want to put that in at the beginning of the heating season, or you put it in at the beginning of the cooling season so you can get your summer loads. I would say the second thing is to put Belimo energy valves in on all your coils. These are not expensive. Up to 1 inch is like $600 for a Belimo energy valve, which is a BTU meter and a control valve put together. Really, your chill water, hot water coils, you really should have these on there, because it maintains your delta T at 10 degrees minimum, usually 14, or we've gone up to 30-degree delta T, depending on the conditions. So I would put Belimo energy valves on all my coils. That'd be one of the first things I would do. Saves a tremendous amount of pumping energy and gives you great control. Smartest, most cost-effective measures if you're not doing a renovation. Well, pumps, you got to put VFDs on pumps and fans. Your cooling tower fans need to be on VFDs. All your hydronic pumps, condenser water, chilled water, hot water. You got to have variable frequency drives on those pumps so that you can save a lot of energy. That's really important. So those are a few things. But, the number one way to save energy is turn your building off when you're not using it. So you get your schedules in and just turn it off. So, but that's an old way.
Thanks. And I know there's one question about benchmarking that I can't personally answer, but if anyone on our benchmarking team that might want to take it, it's what keeps DD from restarting benchmarking, which I thought was ongoing.
Yeah, I can't speak to that.
I was going to say, I think Dave can probably.
Yeah. I'm happy. So I don't know if I know if you can give me a little more information on restarting, what you mean by that. So, I mean, we are currently still running the benchmarking program, and the law is still effective. And actually, we have this year, there's been a process rolled out that allows for automatic syncing of your data with our system. The term we call it, but basically, once you sign up and register, you're not manually reporting in the energy data. It's automatically coming in month to month. So that's been really great. It's really helped with just compliance and getting everyone up to speed. The other thing, just to be just a heads up, with the Clean Energy DC Omnibus Act that came out a couple years ago now, one of the things that it did was it lowers the benchmarking threshold for buildings from 50,000 square feet. The first big step is down to 25,000 square feet, which is going to be for this next calendar year. So we're going to be picking up a lot more buildings going forward. So all the building owners there, it's going to be a new process. And so we have an excellent team at DOE that can help with any technical questions that you may have in getting set up. And again, I think that automatic data syncing with your accounts the portfolio manager really is the way to go. Then you don't have to worry about it. It's hands off, and every year it's going to be reporting. Actually, it's going to be reporting automatically throughout the year. So if that didn't cover your question, please type back in and I'll respond.
One other plug I want to make related to benchmarking, and it goes back to something I was talking about data and the importance of benchmarking data and its accuracy, given the building energy performance standards, is that the DCSEU currently has a free data verification and review program going on now. So you can actually apply and they will review your benchmarking data to confirm its accuracy in advance of the requirement. So if you've got concerns about your benchmarking data or a client's benchmarking data, you can certainly apply for their program.
Yeah, and so I know we're coming at time here. We're over time, actually. And we'll send out an email with all the participants and their email address and who you can contact at DOE if you have follow-up questions, because hopefully some of this conversation continues after today. And, you know, I'm sure some engineers might have had some really technical questions for you, Tim or Lindsay, on the AGU, and I'm glad. I wish you had shared them, but at the same time, you know, sometimes those questions can take a half hour to answer. So we'll make sure you have their information to follow up. And if you have other questions about any of our other programs or events, please feel free to reach out to me, and we'll make sure you get connected to the right folks. So with that, thank you, Tim. Thank you, Lindsay. We really appreciate your presentation, and for everyone else that joined the call today.
Thank you, everyone.